Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on package theft. This is a 1-hour webinar. We'll be prompt and end on time. Really, it's an opportunity for you to ask the questions around package theft that you have. So this is meant to be a very interactive session. We'll start with some introductions of the great folks we have today on the panel, as well as go into just the magnitude of the problem of package theft. And then we'll get into some thoughts around how you can de-risk your mailroom and get some recommendations from the experts. We'll talk about some of the technologies you can apply, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So I'm Lauren O'Brien. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Cloudastructure. I'll be facilitating today's webinar. Today, we are pleased to have Michael Bullock. He's a former Texas legislative staffer and native Austinite. Michael has served for 6 years as a patrol officer before becoming the youngest president of the Austin Police Association. So Michael comes with a wealth of experience in this area, as well as other areas of enforcement. So welcome, Michael. And we also have Amber Hammond, who works at Fetch. Fetch is actually, she'll tell us a little bit about that, but it's a solution directed specifically for package theft. And she has been with Fetch for the last 5 years as the National Sales Director. And then we have our very own Danielle Archuleta, who has also been in package theft solutions for the last 5 years and also in general with multifamily solutions. And she is now currently the Director of Sales of Cloudastructure. So welcome, everybody. You know, the scope of the problem is huge with respect to package theft, but I'd like to open it up to Danielle because you've got a bunch of experience here just to kick it off. What are some of the things you've seen with respect to this particular problem?
Yeah, unfortunately, e-commerce is growing year over year with no signs of slowing down. We're typically seeing a 10% increase. With us just finishing on the heels of Prime Day, that's no different. In fact, this year they set a record $14.2 billion in sales, which is an 11% increase from last year. Obviously, with all of these additional items people are ordering, there's more opportunity, and we just continue to see the problem increase. One of the things I'd specifically like to talk about is USPS. So one of the things that we're seeing is mail carriers are being targeted to receive the master keys that they carry, which open up cluster boxes, apartment mailboxes, as well as PO boxes. So for example, in 2019, 64 mail carriers were attacked and had keys stolen. That number in 2023 was over 600 incidences. So not only are we getting more packages, thieves are getting smarter. They're targeting mail carriers to find the path of least resistance in order to get those packages without actually having to break in or do anything. They have the tools available to them.
Great. Amber, anything you'd like to share on the scope of the problem?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Danielle was saying, is that, 65% of Americans are worried about having their packages stolen, and 40% of online consumers think about this every single day. So when you're thinking about all the things that you order and all of the e-commerce, that this is so top of mind to them that they are thinking about this every single day. To also ad lib and continue on about the theft and the exposure from that perspective, you go on to sites like Reddit and you're seeing on a daily basis where delivery drivers are exchanging access codes to your communities. So it's not even a matter where they have to come in and destroy. They are targeting your communities and they have all the information they need to access that.
Michael, anything you want to add there?
I mean, I think from the law enforcement side, I can tell you that in our experience, we do see increased incidents of these, and people are getting smarter. They tend to be organized. We do have some one-offs that happen where it's just an individual, but there are plenty of instances where we have seen it where they are coordinated efforts to go for larger scale thefts, not just stealing a package here or there. They're targeting, obtaining multiple high-value items.
So what are the things, Michael, just to follow up on that obviously you see a lot of this. What are your recommendations?
Number one thing that I can tell most people is, on these, a lot of times we're coming in as it's happening or after the fact. So one of the most valuable things that any complex or multifamily area can have are cameras. We're going to need camera footage video footage one way or another. Even if officers are on scene, one of the biggest things that we struggle with is, in Texas in particular, is that if an officer shows up, even if we find the individual right after they've committed an offense, they've broken into mailboxes, they stole a package, whatever the case may be, we still have to link them to the crime scene. And so that's why video footage is so important for us, because even if we believe someone may have done it absent the video footage and we make an arrest, oftentimes prosecutors don't accept that as reason to move forward with the case. So there's not going to be much follow-up that actually happens with that. So cameras are probably the most valuable thing that anybody can put in, and making sure that they are at multiple different angles, including outside of a mailroom, is helpful in order to determine if someone showed up in a vehicle, because that vehicle information is what can help us close the loop on organized crime rings that are doing this, and determine links with other reports of mail theft or package theft that we've had. So having high quality cameras, multiple different angles, and making sure that lighting is good are some of the most important things that we can have. Other tips, kind of like what y'all can see on the PowerPoint, are just making sure that you're keeping up with maintenance. If things are broken, if lights are out, make sure that you repair things, because if things are in disarray, people see that there's already stuff that's broken, it's more likely that you're going to be targeted, because they can see that it's already happened once, so it's probably easier to do again or to do on a larger scale. So keeping up with maintenance is very important. Having secured areas, whether that's for the complex as a whole or in particular your mailroom. Some areas have specific package delivery rooms or systems. Those are extremely helpful, that are going to actually secure those items. So that way it's not just an open access, open air type area. Super simple solutions can be to offer schedule with, sometimes UPS will offer it, various different carriers will offer it. If you're as a complex, if you can offer that as a way to allow residents to schedule delivery to an office, so that way it's not just sitting out there in the open, is very helpful and a good alternative. And then for us, it's also really important to have good points of contact. When it comes to the investigative side with police, the biggest struggles that we have, in particular at night or outside of your office hours, is if a theft occurs or we find someone that's damaging mailboxes or whatever the case may be, if we locate that individual and we detain them, but we cannot get in contact with the property owner or manager, there's going to be a high likelihood that we're going to have to let the individual go, and there's not going to be much that we can do. So having a point of contact that is going to be available 24/7 by whatever rotation or whatever means y'all deem necessary, but having someone that will answer the phone is very important, and making sure that we have the ability to get into the complex. As technology is changing, we want to make sure that we have the ability to actually get into the property, like through access code. So making sure you keep that up to date is also very important, so we can actually get to the scene and detain individuals or investigate the crime, kind of one of the first steps.
So in areas where, I would imagine where you are, there's a lot of multifamily properties, for example. How do they keep you up to date with the point of contact? Is there a database, or like what is the method?
So in Austin for APD, and this is going to be true for most jurisdictions, is we use a computer-aided dispatching system. And in that system, we're able to put law enforcement only notes. So when the address for the complex pops up, it populates for us what a gate code is and who the point of contact is.
Okay.
So if that changes, all that needs to happen is if you just call the police department or the communication center. So like even for us, you could call 311 in Austin, or if you just call a non-emergency line and say, hey, I just need to update the information for my complex with the department so that way you guys can get in. Those are things that can be updated regularly, and it just pops up auto-populated in our systems is usually how
that's terrific. That's awesome. Okay, why don't we go into some of the technologies then? And Danielle, feel free to add to a little bit on what Michael said as well, as if you'd like.
Yeah, so Michael, thanks for pointing out cameras. Essentially, we have seen reports showing that just by having cameras in place at any given location, that you're typically deterring about 50% of crime, or there's about a 50% reduction in crime rates in the areas that have cameras. Specifically for Cloudastructure, what we're seeing is with our proactive remote guarding solution, we're seeing a 97% deterrence rate when communities use us as well as our remote guards. With that being said, that 2 to 3% that does sneak through because of the cameras and the recording, we have a 95% apprehension rate. And some of the features that we offer in order to help both law enforcement and the on-site teams really track and target those individuals is features like motion detection, object detection, and zone detection. So you guys aren't having to look through video footage when there's nothing actually happening. We're only capturing crime as it happens in real time. We're able to provide alerts. So those alerts can go to members of the on-site team. They can go to members of local law enforcement when things are happening, so that we're really partnering to help make Mike and his team's jobs way more efficient. And lastly, we do have a team that helps assist with forensic evidence and investigations. Therefore, instead of the on-site teams being responsible for figuring this all out, we've got people that will help you do that to make it easier to recoup for damage, theft, and lease violations.
Here's a little video of us catching someone in action.
This is a secure area. You are being watched and recorded by a live agent. Please leave immediately.
Sometimes it's just a little bit of talk down. And again, 97% of the time, the folks run away. So it's very, very powerful. Let's hear from Amber on Fetch. What do you guys do?
Thank you. So our technology is kind of a deterrence to begin with by taking the package and the accumulation of packages completely off of your community altogether. So what we're really doing is eliminating that exposure of having packages being, housed on the community, which will attract unwanted neighbors from coming in, but it'll also eliminate your community of that package liability. And it will create a signature feature. As Michael talked about, it's really important to be able to schedule those package deliveries and have a signature required to make sure you have that secure delivery. And Fetch is one of those programs that will do that across all carriers for your community. Essentially, how we do that is when our technology is built out. So when we roll out, your residents will sign up for a unique Fetch address. They will use that for all of their ordering, which will redirect their packages to an offsite facility where our warehouse and our team will sit there and receive that package and securely hold it until the resident is ready to schedule that delivery. And then our drivers will deliver them to their door at their time and convenience with the signature required feature if that's something they choose. And what that does is it really gives that secure delivery and eliminates and brings down a level of traffic that's coming to your community when it comes to carriers.
Do you have any stats on how much this reduces package theft for a particular area?
I don't have any particularly, but we see that the theft that we hear and experience are from when things are being housed on site, whether it's by the leasing team or the package rooms or locker systems, because it's an attraction for an easy grab of, a high level of packages. So we really dramatically reduce that by getting that package directly to the residents' hands at their time and convenience. So eliminating that exposure.
Yeah, I would think so. I'm just going to remind folks, as we move into sort of what else you can do, like if you have particular questions, start putting them in the chat because we will be opening it up for Q&A. But Michael, back to you. Is there anything you recommend in terms of what else folks can do?
I think you're looking at, alternative solutions, right? A lot of this is providing options for people to try to just mitigate it even happening in the first place, right? A lot of these things kind of address that aspect, right? A lot of our challenges come in after the fact. Anything that can be done kind of as the deterrent is big. And I know Danielle hit it again, but cameras, quite honestly, in our experience, are probably the greatest deterrent as well as the greatest investigative asset. So for something that's going to cover everything front to back, it's cameras that are going to do it all for us. But it's got to be more than just, if you just put them in one location, right? Like it's going to have minimal impact. And that's why multiple cameras tend to be more effective. In particular for us, a big part of that is making sure that we have something outside of the mailroom that's likely to capture vehicle information or where they came from, because that can reveal other weaknesses for a complex as to where those security risks might be, where someone's gaining access.
Yeah, one thing I can think of is, multifamily properties are very, very busy. The property managers are doing lots of things. And
Yeah.
sometimes, at least in our experience, they are experiencing incidents just, 15, 20 a day.
Hmm.
So a report on each one can be very time consuming. And so I guess one thing I would say is like, look for ways that you can automate that sort of, or make it very easy for someone to create an incident report. Do you want to speak a little bit to that, Danielle, and what we might do for them?
Yeah, part of the partnership is taking that off of on-site teams. And so, like I said, the forensic investigation and the reporting, we provide those services. Overnight, if you've got our remote guards, you're going to get a month or a weekly or daily report, whatever you need for your community, showing what's happening, wrapped up in a little bow. If you need further information or that investigation, we're going to assist with that. So our whole job is to make your lives a lot easier. That being said, I know Amber and I have talked, and I know she's got a really great statistic on reporting in general. So I'm going to kick it over to her to share that.
So I think what's really important here is that you're planning and identifying those exposure points, and that we're really educating your on-site teams and your residents. I have been at communities multiple times, like just visiting, or I've seen it where those residents are, sharing those access codes. They're putting tape around those package locker systems, and just being able to make sure that we've had community managers that are, shouting out codes. Just making sure that we're educating our on-site teams, I think, is super important when it comes to this, and making sure that we're mitigating that challenge to begin with.
The statistic I wanted us to share.
Yeah.
So what's really interesting, and what we found in our research, is when theft happens, package theft happens, about 60% of the time, residents are contacting the original seller or the carrier to receive refund of that particular object. What's really scary is that only about 15% of the time does package theft get reported to the police. So it makes it more challenging for the police team to bust up these rings or these individuals that are highly educated, that are targeting people, if they don't know when and where it's happening. So to the first point here, report, report, report. Obviously, for your $2 widget, it might not be worth the police time to track down your $2 Amazon item, but definitely knowing that most items are a little bit more expensive, or the average delivery or order is going to be a higher dollar value amount. Make sure you are reporting that to the authorities, because that helps with their investigation in, tracking these individuals down and, making them serve time or come to justice for the crimes that they're committing.
Yeah, you touched on organized crime. Michael, what do you see in terms of organized crime versus just, is it this individuals? What are you seeing?
So we see a mix of both. I personally have responded to numerous different mail thefts that have occurred in the Austin area. Some that have been at multifamily as far as an apartment complex, and then some that have been in residential areas, duplexes, whatever the case may be. So we do see a mix of both, but in one, and it was one in particular that I dealt with, it was an individual where they'll have someone that's driving around in a car that's storing everything basically, and so they're kind of following behind. So they're keeping everything they've stolen is in a car behind an individual who's on foot, walking ahead, looking for packages, looking for weak points, and then they'll pass it off. And little pros and cons to their little strategy here, but part of the design in that one is that if the individual who's drawing the suspicion that's on foot gets caught, well, the guy in the car just drives off and they still have the majority of the items with them. So we do see the organized aspect where they will do it in, multiple different ways. They have teams that will do it. If you see the same person wandering around multiple different times, they will scout out areas. So there is a lot of that does go on, as well as sometimes, just like you saw in the video that you showed a minute ago, you get the one-offs where it's just an individual, and by brute force, they try to get in. So, and just circle back on one of those points too that y'all brought up. Reporting is it's critical for us and ultimately for y'all as well, because our departments are all driven by stats. They're all driven by where the crime is occurring, where we're getting reports, what the outcomes are. That's going to drive where our resources go. And right now, especially as most departments and in Austin, we deal with staffing shortages and long response times, and people don't want to wait. That gets frustrating, so people don't want to report things. And that just means that our resources aren't going to go where they probably should. So there are alternative solutions out there. In Austin, we have a online reporting system too. ireportaustin.com is a great resource that you can use to where you can file a report online. And at a minimum, then we have the documentation, right? Follow-up may not happen, kind of depends, but it's important to still make the report so that way we know what's going on in areas. And that's what helps us put together, if we do have leads with individuals, we can see what areas they might be hitting most. And that's where we can direct our resources in order to try to intervene and to, ultimately make an arrest when we find out who's been committing the crime.
There's a follow on here, in terms of getting an incident report out in a timely manner. Is there any stat around faster apprehension relative to getting the report to you?
Not really, right? So I should probably say it really depends, right?
Yeah.
If obviously if you see something that's in progress, right, you need to call us. Make sure when you're calling 911 that, especially if you're doing a remote monitoring, that you don't hang up with us, right? Try to stay on with us to give us the information. We need as much detail as is possible. We need to know if the person is still on scene, right? If they have what kind of tools, potential weapons, all those kinds of things. So as much as you can stay on the line, it's helpful. The ones where you're not likely to get anything is when someone calls 911, like, hey, I'm at this complex, someone's trying to break into our mailroom, and it looks like this person. If that's all that we get, it's not likely to make it very high up on our list of the call priority list that we have, the kind of the matrix that we have, because we have very limited information. So the more information we get, and when someone's live viewing, tell us, hey, I'm watching this happen right now, that's going to be more beneficial. Now, if the crime has already occurred, getting a report to us is important, but that's not like the timeliness, right? Versus if you do it that same day versus you do it the next day. That's probably not going to have a significant impact on whether the person is ultimately apprehended. It's going to depend upon the evidence that we have. Do you have video footage of them? Did they leave something behind? Things of that nature. So the quality of the evidence will determine that. We are pretty good. We do have a fairly decent rate of making arrests in these types of cases, but I don't have a hard statistic on that one. It's sometimes for us that even that can be hard to track, as well as what the follow through with prosecution is on the back end.
All right. And if I don't live in Austin and I want to work with you and get you the report, you mentioned ireportaustin.com. Does everyone have something like this across the country, or is it 311? Like how do people know where to even go to do this?
Yeah, most agencies are going to have a non-emergency report line where you can call in and either report a non-emergency, you can make a report over the phone. And a lot of agencies are starting to switch to having a online reporting platform to where you can go online and then just give the details. And effectively, you're writing out your own report to a degree of just all the information that you know. And it may have some prompt questions where they're going to try to ask you a few more details. But a lot of agencies, in particular, larger ones, are going to do that. Once you move into smaller agencies in cities, even those probably with, less than 200,000, you're probably going to wind up maybe being able to do it over the phone, but more often than not, you may have to wait for an officer in those smaller jurisdictions.
Yeah. Here's a question for you, Amber. If I'm ordering groceries on Amazon, can Fetch be a solution for that?
Thanks for that question. So all of our warehouses do have commercial refrigeration, so we can properly secure that, and we're ideal for specific grocery experiences like HelloFresh, Blue Apron, and those things. But we do have commercial refrigeration at all of our warehouses so that we can properly store those items.
Awesome. So let's talk about arrow keys for a second. So the Postal Service sounds like they acknowledge that arrow keys for multifamily properties, have been lost across the country. They have a new initiative called Project Safe Delivery and they offer no grants or solutions that will directly aid multifamily in securing their mailrooms. But is there anything in this project that will help? Anyone know about Project Safe Delivery?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. One of the things that they're trying to do to mitigate some of the consequences of those arrow keys being stolen is putting in digital electronic locks. So that is a way to thwart people from being able to access those, parcel lockers or your USPS mail. What's interesting about this is in the scope of the issue, only about 1% of all locks are scheduled to be replaced. So when you think about like how big the issue is and how many access points there is, that's not very much. But they are trying to partner through education efforts, through partnership efforts with the police department in order to get a handle on this. And so I think it's a step in the right direction, but I don't know that it wholly solves the issue, especially with the scope being so big and the only physical resolution being quite minor.
Great. What about days, right? We just recently had an Amazon Prime Day sale a couple days ago. There's days where your social security check are coming in. Are there other days that folks need to know just to be on the lookout for, and maybe they could educate their residents?
I think it's important to be aware of any like major technology product release days. So like if you have, the new iPhone coming out or a new Android phone or something like that, where people are going to trend in and start purchasing in high volume, I think those are very important to be aware of as well. And also be aware of the Prime days, because where it used to be a once a year thing, that is now becoming last year there were 2 Prime days. And so as they continue to kind of push and spur those experiences, we need to be aware of when those are. And usually those days just pop up.
Yeah. Have any of you seen, particular properties, what is the cost to them? Or are they losing residents because of this? Or is their property becoming less valuable, so they're getting less rents? Like what is sort of the cost of not addressing this problem?
I would say from a marketing perspective, you talk about your online reputation. That's going to deter people from wanting to be at your community when they see that, the current residents aren't feeling secure, or that they feel like they're getting their packages stolen. That's deterring new residents, which is deterring revenue. So there are many ways that this directly affects the community, not to mention destruction of the property. So as we've talked about access points and, replacing that when somebody breaks into it or takes a crowbar to those rooms, that all has to be replaced at the cost of the community as well.
Yeah. Michael, anything on your end there?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, from our perspective as an association, we do have people that will reach out to us and ask us like, hey, I'm looking at moving to this area. Is this a particular, do you know anything about this complex or this part of town, anything like that? So we have people that will reach out to us trying to get information about crime statistics that are going on in certain areas. So, we do have people that ask those types of questions. My experience is, where you do have incidents where theft is reoccurring and there's little that we can do. There's not much that's changing as a result of it. It does seem like people are trending away from those areas, or it's just becoming less popular for people to go into those complexes or case may be. So we do see that.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing other questions. Is there anything else that any of you would like to add with respect to this topic? Any additional value that we can bring to our attendees here? Oh, here we go. How should we go about scheduling time to discuss property specific needs with Cloudastructure? Well, that's a good one.
Danielle. I'll let you answer that, or Lauren, I can answer it. Yeah, there's definitely a ton of different ways to get a hold of us. My email address is going to be shared here. We also have our website in which you can submit an inquiry. Same with Fetch's team. So if you guys, anybody on here is interested in Fetch services, you can reach out to Amber. I know we'll probably be sharing her contact information on screen, as well as their website. But one thing I wanted to bring up, Lauren, that we didn't really discuss, but we had on as a talking point is there are some states, as a preventative measure, have enacted laws which protect, people of that state, making package theft a felony. And so I kind of wanted to touch on that since Amber, Mike, and I all are in the great state of Texas, and we happen to be in one of the top 10 metros for package theft. One of our other recommendations is obviously push for legislation. If you are in an area or a state that has a lot of crime, this is a good preventative measure to help deter and demotivate those criminals. So the 8 states currently that have felony laws against package theft are Texas, Michigan, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Georgia, New Jersey, and Kentucky.
All right. Anything else, Amber, Michael?
Something else that can be available, it is available here in Austin, and other jurisdictions likely do it as well, is your association, like the police association, police unions. We typically have programs where we have officers that work as courtesy officers for an apartment complex that they live in. So if complexes want to partner with those types of groups, our department has a policy that allows officers to work that. So that way you have an officer that's actually living in your complex that is on site. In particular, I know of an officer here in Austin that went to a complex and as a courtesy officer, and because of how much he worked with management, they were able to drive down all of the petty crime issues that happened as a whole, mail theft, break-ins, burglaries, all that other kind of stuff, and used him as an asset to help them figure out a lot of the security issues they were having. And last time I talked to them, they were able to drive down their incidents of crime in a variety of different categories down by almost 80 to 90%. So sometimes those programs can be helpful. And oftentimes your local associations are available and they're there and they can help, build those partnerships. That way you have officers there with you helping address a lot of these problems specific to your community.
That's really good to hear. Amber, any closing remarks there?
Yeah, I would just like to, what we've all expressed here over this webinar is just deter as much as possible, monitor when you can, and report, with the stat of 15% of actual package theft being reported, and the average monetary value to that is anywhere from $50 to $200 a package and theft experience. Like, just report so that, the departments can do what they need to do and we can get people prosecuted, when these things come up.
Terrific. And then I guess lastly, I want to mention that we do have a white paper on Project Safe Delivery. Kathleen will post in the chat where you can find that, and that might give you some other tidbits. I want to thank everybody, especially our panelists who are extremely knowledgeable about the topic. So thanks, Danielle, Amber, Michael, for attending. Please reach out if you have any questions to any of these folks. And maybe we'll get Michael's email in there as well. I don't know, Michael, if you'd like that, but
yeah, that's fine.
We could certainly do that. I think we have some great tidbits. I like how you said it, Amber. Deter, monitor, and report. We can remember that. And so with that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. And there will be a recording of this. We'll send it out to all of you, and you can share it with others that you think might find it useful. And again, just reach out to us if you have additional questions. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a great day.